Okay, hello class. This is medical terminology, and today is going to be Unit 3. We're going to be going over the integumentary system, which is also known as skin. Integument, it means skin. So we'll be talking about the dermis, the epidermis, and then lots of little bitty things that live in the epidermis and dermis. Besides hair follicles and blood vessels, we'll see lots of other things too. So let me get my screen shared with you. If I can figure this out. 1 second, I'm having technical difficulties. And here we go. Okay. Move my icon up here. Okay, so we're going to be going over the integumentary system, colors, and then other suffixes today. The objectives, you can read those on your own. Okay, so before we start looking at any words or any learning any meaning of any words, let's look at a cross section of the skin that is cut down. So you can see our outer layer of our skin is called the epidermis. And the epidermis is actually made of cells that are dead. So the epidermis are all your dead skin cells that are falling off of you and peeling off of you all the time. But there is quite a thick layer of them, as you can see here. Not very, well, not too thick, but it is thick enough though where it's pretty significant that it's a layer of dead cells. And then under that, you're going to have your dermis, okay? And the dermis is a much thicker layer. And as you can see, there's lots of little things going on in the dermis. Well, the dermis is made up of skin cells that are alive. So the dermis is very much growing, very much always growing and actually pushing itself out toward the outside. And so eventually those skin cells that are in the dermis will reach the epidermis and they will actually die and then stay there for a while until they're actually pushed off by us in the shower or by us rubbing or putting on our clothes, or just throughout the day skin cells just fall off of us when we scratch our arm or something like that. That's just how the epidermis just sheds. I know it sounds kind of nasty, but that's how it goes. You've also got blood vessels in there. You can see some little capillaries, some venules and some arterioles. Then you've got your sweat glands. Those are also your sudoryferous glands. And you've got your sebaceous glands, those are your oil glands. And then you see a big hair follicle. And that hair follicle extends all the way from the very bottom of the dermis, where you can see the beginning of the underlying fat layer. And then it goes all the way through the dermis and the epidermis, and then it's held on by the skin layers. And then that's how our hair holds on to itself. It doesn't fall out. Okay, functions of the integumentary system. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. These you already know. Protects against harmful environmental elements such as dirt, outside water, bacteria, things like that. Protects against fluid loss, so it keeps fluid inside of our body. Our skin does produce vitamin D, so there is one vitamin that our body can produce on its own without getting it from food, and that's vitamin D, and that's actually made in our skin, along with sunlight, and it's made. Our skin helps regulate our body temperature, so think of it as just a layer of insulation that helps keep you warm. It does excrete waste, so think of your sweat and your oil glands as being as containing waste. Not so much your oil glands, but mostly your sweat glands are going to be filled with a lot of sodium, a lot of potassium, and a lot of extra ions and water that we can get rid of. The skin is our primary provider of sensory information for light touch, deep pressure, temperature, sharp touch, sharp and dull, hot and cold, things like that. Okay, So now, and those things were, like I said, self-explanatory. I didn't have to tell you those things, but maybe you've learned one thing. Now let's go over some words. Okay, so we're going to have some new word roots this week, and these are going to have to do with the integumentary system. Okay, so ACR always means extremities. There's and I will tell you this to kind of put your mind at ease. I know that doesn't even make sense at all, and it doesn't make sense to me either, to tell you the truth. But the only time, very seldom will you ever see this word root. And the one time you do see it is when you're talking about the tip of your shoulder or the acromion. The acromion process, that actually is part of your upper extremity. So that's how I remember what ACR stands for, is that it means extremities. You don't have that down on your lower extremity, but you do have an ACR, an acromion on the top of your shoulder. Cutane means skin. Maybe you've heard the word cutaneous before. Derm also means skin, like dermatitis or dermatologist. Dermat means skin. This is pronounced myc, M-Y-C. It means fungus. We'll get to some fungus words in a minute. Onc. This is pronounced onc. The Y is just a pronouncing vowel, or I'm sorry, just a silent vowel. It's onc. It means nail, such as your fingernail or your toenail. Okay, some more word roots. The word cyan, you probably know this, means blue. Urethra means red, and that doesn't mean, that's not supposed to sound like urethra in your urinary system, but it's like erythrocytes, which are red blood cells. So that's about the only time, or erythemia, which is when your skin turns red and inflamed. Leuc means white, like leukocytes, white blood cells. Melon means black, such as your melanin in your skin. And the amount of melanin is the pigment that we have in our skin. And some of us have a lot more pigment than others. So people like me don't have hardly any melanin in my skin. I'm very, very, very fair skinned, very, very fair complected. And if I get any sunlight, I burn immediately, and then it all peels off, and then I'm just as white as I ever was again. But then many people have a lot more melanin than that, and they have more protection from getting sunburn from that. So it's all the same color. It's all the same chemical that makes all of the colors of all the races and ethnicities around the world. It's just different levels of it. This is pronounced, the X is pronounced as a Z, so it's xanth, and that means yellow. Okay, now we'll go over some suffixes, and then we'll start making some words. We've had this before. Itis means inflammation. Osis means abnormal condition. Osis. So we'll come up with that in a minute. That'll come back to us in a minute. OUS just is pronounced os or us, means pertaining to, can go at the end of a lot of words. Doesn't really change the meaning, it just means pertaining to that particular word root. This is usually pronounced, has an O in front of it, and it is not pronounced Tommy, but otomy means a cut into or an incision into. Okay, now some prefixes. Epi means on, upon, over, or on top. Like epidermis is the top layer of your dermis, top layer of your skin. Hypo means below, deficient, or under a certain amount. Like hypotension means low blood pressure. Intra means within, very common. Per means through. Like a percutaneous injection. That means an injection going through the skin. Per means through, cutaneous means skin. OUS means pertaining to. So it means pertaining to an injection going through the skin. So if you're starting to see how I put words together with all these word roots and prefixes and suffixes, now you're starting to see how this semester is going to flow. This is how we're going to start putting things together and learning meanings of things. Sub means below or under. That's a very common prefix. Now we're going to start building some words. Acrodermatitis. Okay, so we've got acro, which means extremity, derm, which means skin, and itis, which means inflammation of. So it's inflammation of the skin on the extremities. Cutaneous just means pertaining to the skin. Dermal, so we know that's skin, and that AL just means pertaining to, so it just means pertaining to the skin. Dermatitis is just inflammation of the skin. Dermatologist, we've had ologist before. That's a person that studies, so this actually means a person that studies the skin. So that's the doctor that you go to for skin problems. Dermatology is just the study of skin. Dermatopathy is a disease of the skin. So we've got skin, and then pathy means disease. We've had that before. So dermatopathy is the disease of the skin. Epidermal, so we've got above, skin, pertaining to. So it's something pertaining to the epidermis, something pertaining to the top layer of skin. Hypodermic, so we've got hypo, which means below, and then dermic, which means skin, and that IC just means pertaining to, so it's pertaining to something below the skin, like a hypodermic needle. Think of that. It's a needle that goes just under the skin. Intradermal, something going within the skin. Okay, let me start this over, hard to pronounce. Onkomycosis. So what's that mean? So we had onc, myc, and osis. Okay, so there's some work. We've got those things. So remember, onc meant nail. Myc, MYC, meant fungus. And osis means abnormal condition or pertaining to. Can mean either one. So this means abnormal condition of the nail with fungus, or just in layman's terms, onkomycosis just means fungus of the nail or nail fungus. So if you've got yellowing of the toenails like nasty old men do or nasty old people do sometimes, no offense meant by anyone if you have that, but that's actually onkomycosis, it's fungus. Oncosis is just just pertaining to the nail or opening the nail. Oncotomy is an incision into the nail. So that might, maybe if you have a what's the term that's leaving my head right now? A ingrown toenail. They don't remove the whole toenail. Usually they just cut the part off that's ingrown. So they do an It's actually part of that. It's actually called an oncotomy or an oncotomy. Just means removal of the nail or part of the nail. Percutaneous just means going through the skin. Per means through. Subcutaneous, so that sub means under. Think submarine, going under, or subterranean, underground. So subcutaneous means under the skin. So there's hypodermic needle, a needle going under the skin. There's a subcutaneous injection, which means it's injection into the skin. So it's going, you can see this needle in this second picture on your right, this illustration is just a needle that's stuck, it goes through the epidermis and then it's just going into the dermis. Here's onkomycosis. So you can see it's yellow almost, and it's so yellow it's almost turned white. So that whole entire nail is just very infected. Topical medication is not going to get rid of that. They're going to need some oral medication, which is actually available for that now, or some kind of injection, or just remove the whole nail and start over if they do that. But that's not why I'm a dermatologist. So. Okay, color. Let's make some words with color. Acrocyanosis. So acro means extremity, cyan is blue, and osis is condition of. So this means a blue extremity, condition of an extremity being blue. And something, our body parts turn blue when they don't have enough oxygen. So that's never a good thing. You never want to have any kind of cyanosis in your body. Cyanosis just means condition of being blue. Erythrocyte. So we've had the urethra is red, and we've had cyte before that's blue, so this is a red blood cell. Erythroderma, so red skin, so reddened skin, and that usually happens with inflammation. If you have an infection or if you fall down and get scraped and then your skin turns red, that's erythroderma. Leukocyte, so white cell, white blood cell. Some more color words. Leukoderma, so white skin, and that doesn't refer to Caucasian people. That refers to a condition of having very abnormally white skin, where it's like it's white because of a pathology or a condition. Melanoderma. That just is condition of having lots of melanin referring to the melanin in your skin, or condition of having lots of melanin in your skin. Melanoma, so melanin is a pigment, and then oma, remember we've had that before. What does oma mean? Think about it for a second. Means cancer or tumor. So this means a cancer or tumor of the pigment cells. And so this is the common, these are the cells, or this is the cancer you get when you get skin cancer from being out in the sun too long, or too much during your life. You'll get melanoma, or an abnormal growth of pigment cells, and it'll often turn into like a black or almost purplish mold that'll be raised up, and it'll have usually abnormal jagged edges is what a melanoma looks like. Sometimes they're purple, if I didn't say that. Xanthoderma is yellow skin. So you may have yellow xanthoderma if you have jaundice. Xanthosis is just the condition of being yellow. There's a melanoma right there. You can see it's kind of blackish, purplish, reddish, and it's got irregular edges. It's not nice and brown like most moles should be. It's just all kind of like a blob. Okay, now here's some words that are not built for medical words. Abscess. What is an abscess? An abscess is a pocket or a place in the skin or the tissue that has become infected with bacteria, and is actually a closed up pocket or hole in your body that bacteria get in and cause an infection in, and it will have to be removed and cut out. Basal cell carcinoma is a cancer of your, well, the basal cells are part of your epithelial cells, and they're which you'll learn about a lot more in anatomy. Biopsy. This is whenever they think you may have a cancerous tissue or a tumor, and so they do a very simple surgical procedure where they do a small incision, and they take just a small tissue sample of that particular organ or tissue, and then they test it under a microscope or with other tests to see if it is cancerous or not. Edema is another word for swelling. So if you retain fluid, your ankle will swell. If you turn your ankle and then it swells up, that's edema. That's lymph or edema. That means the fluid that causes swelling. Laceration is just a deep cut in the skin. A lesion is an even deeper cut. Well, a lesion can be any cut. So even if you just scrape your skin, that's a lesion. Let me correct myself. Laceration is the deep cut. Lesion can be any scrape, cut, even a shallow cut. Here's a basal cell carcinoma on the nose. This guy obviously let it go for a very long time before he came to get it looked at, and it's huge. I don't know why people let things like that go. Some more words not built from medical terms or from Greek or Latin. Pressure ulcer or bed sore. Most of you have heard the term bed sore before, and probably in terms of talking about older people. A lot of times in nursing homes develop bed sores because they don't move around in bed a lot, or they're not turned by the staff as much. Well, then the term after that they replaced it with pressure ulcer to make it sound a little bit better than bed sore. And now the term has changed yet again to pressure injury. So now you're going to hear in the literature and by other healthcare providers that they'll say pressure ulcer or pressure injury, and they'll say those terms interchangeably. They mean the same thing. What it means is that you are on a bony prominence, sitting or lying on a bony prominence for too long, and it doesn't get enough, that the tissue under that bony prominence doesn't get enough oxygen after about an hour or so of you laying on that prominence, and so skin begins to die. And there's different, first the epidermis will begin to die, and then layers of the dermis slowly start to go. There's many layers of pressure injuries. You'll learn about those in other semesters, so don't worry about it for now. I went off on a tangent, sorry. Shingles. What is shingles? You all know this. Shingles is something that a lot of older people get, but it's actually the exact same herpes virus that causes chickenpox. So if you've had chickenpox before, or if you have any type of herpes, then you have the shingles virus in you. And what happens is the herpes virus will lay dormant in our body our whole life until we're either older, or we're immunocompromised, or we're in some period of prolonged anxiety and stress. And when that happens, our immune system will not be quite at its peak. It'll actually be lowered a little bit, and this virus will become active again. And what shingles will do, looks like, is it will develop. It's really weird. It develops on the pathway of nerves, and it looks just like the chickenpox virus. It's these big rashes, pustules that are itchy and scratchy, and that you want to scratch all the time, and they bleed and scab over. But it just goes along the distribution of the nerve path. So it'll usually be like stripes on a person's back. It may go like in 2 or 3 stripes, or like in just a pathway along part of their back or their chest or their arms, or sometimes their face. You can get it anywhere along your body. But it does happen when you're immunocompromised. But yeah, it's the same virus that comes from chickenpox. Squamous cell carcinoma is another epithelial carcinoma. Staphylococcus is a type of bacteria. Streptococcus is a type of bacteria. You can see the plural there. That's a pressure injury right there. So this is the sacral pressure injury. This is just the little sticker ruler they have to measure it. That's on the lower back. So this is just under the belt line. You can see the top of the buttocks there. But this person has been sitting or laying on their sacrum for, that could maybe be 2 or 3 hours without changing positions, and that can happen in just that short amount of time. So it looks like their whole layer of epidermis, it's actually gone there. And so what you're looking at, the red area, is actually fresh dermis that's exposed. There's another carcinoma that went way too long before they got it taken care of. You should never let something go that long. If you want to know the shape of staph and strep, there they are. Okay, let's finish with abbreviations and then a medical note. BCC means basal cell carcinoma. BX. BX stands for biopsies. Remember, DX was diagnosis, PX was prognosis, BX is biopsy. Decube. Okay, this actually is an old term. This means decubitus ulcer, and that's just a term for a pressure injury or a pressure sore. RBC stands for red blood cell. Squamous cell carcinoma, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, white blood cell. Let's talk about some plural. Let's just go through this. Sometimes Latin and Greek suffixes end in A's and E's to make things plural. Sometimes in aces, sometimes ices. You don't really have to memorize that. As long as you know the word root and the prefix and everything else, you can pretty much figure out if it's singular or plural. But do read through these as examples. And remember, even though I am going through these examples very fast, you do have this PowerPoint available to you to look at at your convenience on Blackboard. Okay, let's look at this this is very small print for me to look at. We may just skip that today because I cannot read that. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen. Okay, so that's all for the integumentary chapter. So if you have any questions about anything, definitely before you send me your questions, go back through the PowerPoint on your own, go through the video and just look through it, and then email me your questions. Remember, you do have an activity that the homework that is due that goes along with this, so please do send that to me and submit through Blackboard. Thank you very much. And I will see you guys in lab.